Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back once again with another amazing science tutorial video. I'm Coach Spivey, joined with my son Jordan Spivey. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on our amazing science videos and content. And also check us out at our website at www.fathersoninnovations.com. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our video for today, which is Gregor Mendel Inheritance 101. So let's do this. Before we get started with inheritance, let's go ahead and take a look at some important words to know. And we'll start off with genetics, which is the scientific study of heredity. Also fertilization, and this is during sexual reproduction when male and female reproductive cells join. So you have the sperm for the male and the egg for the female. And then trait is a specific characteristic such as height, eye color, or hair type. Then we have hybrids, and these are the offspring of crosses between parents with different traits. Then we have genes, factors that are passed from parents to offspring. So each one of us get genes from our parents, and those genes are passed from our parents to us. Then we have alleles, which are the different forms of a gene. So you can have an allele for being tall or allele for being short. Then the principle of dominance, which is Mendel's conclusion that some alleles are dominant and some are recessive. Then we look at segregation. This is the separation of alleles during gamete formation. Now let's take a look at the word homozygous dominant. And if you notice, let's go ahead and look at homo right here. So homo stands for the same. So for example, say if being tall was dominant over being short. And the way we would show it with the letters is we would draw two big T's. And notice since it's homozygous dominant, homo means the same, we have two big T's right here, which shows that they're dominant over being short. Now let's take a look at heterozygous dominant. And hetero means different. So if it's heterozygous dominant, we would have a big T, and then we would have a little t. So if it's dominant, as long as you have that big letter there, then it's going to be dominant over the short letter. So it's going to mask or cover up that smaller letter. And then if you look at homozygous recessive, remember once again, homo means the same. So since it's recessive, those big T's are not going to show. So the way we would show that is drawing or putting two small t's. So just to recap, if it's homozygous dominant, you're going to have two big letters. If it's heterozygous dominant, you're going to have an uppercase letter and a lowercase letter. And then if it's homozygous recessive, you're going to have two lowercase letters. Now let's take a look at Gregor Mendel's pea plant experiments. And the reason why Gregor Mendel crossed the pea plants is mainly to find out how do we inherit our traits from our parents. So do we get all of the traits or do we get some of the traits? And then what traits do we pass on to our own offspring? So we'll do this by creating a Punnett square. Now it's important to note on a Punnett square, on the top it usually represents the male, and then along the sides it represents the female. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross homozygous dominant traits, which is going to be our yellow pea plants, with homozygous recessive traits, which is going to be our green pea plants. And remember, so this is coming from the male, and then this side right here is going to be coming from the female. And when we cross them, we just do it quite simply, as in we'll have to take this big Y right here, and it's going to cross with this small y. And then we have this uppercase Y right here, and we're going to cross it with this lowercase y, and we're going to do the same thing right here. So uppercase Y, lowercase y, and then uppercase Y, lowercase y. And if we take a look at this, all four of these are heterozygous dominant. So I'm just going to put hetero dominant. So that means we have 100% of them are going to be yellow peas. And the reason why they're going to be yellow, remember with heterozygous dominant, that dominant trait is going to mask that recessive trait. So what Gregor Mendel ended up doing next is actually crossing this F1 generation right here. Remember, this F1 generation came from the parent generations up here. So let me go ahead and draw a line across and actually show you what he did. So let's make another Punnett square right here. And remember, in that F1 generation, 100% of them were heterozygous dominant. And that means all of them were yellow peas. So I put my males up top. Then here are our females along the side. And we're going to go ahead and do another cross. So now we have uppercase Y, so homozygous dominant, uppercase Y, lowercase y, heterozygous dominant, and then we have another uppercase Y, lowercase y, heterozygous dominant, followed by two lowercase y's, which is going to be homozygous recessive. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this. So we're going to have homozygous dominant, heterozygous dominant. So that means 3 of our P's are going to be yellow. So I put yellow right here. And then 1 of our P's actually right here is going to be green. So it's going to be a 3-to-1 ratio right here. So 3 are yellow and 1 are green. And it's actually showed right here as well. So 75% of them are going to be yellow. Then 25% are going to be green. And if we look at that genotypic ratio, 1 is homozygous dominant. So we have 2 big Y's. And then 2 of them are heterozygous dominant. So 1 big Y, 1 little y, and then 1 of them is homozygous recessive. So that is our genotypic ratio, and it also shows our different types of alleles ratios right there. Now let's take a closer look at Punnett squares, and let's take a look at this. So tall is dominant over short. So tall is going to be represented by a big T, short is going to be represented by a little t. And we're going to cross 2 heterozygous dominant parents. Remember, hetero stands for different. So 2 heterozygous dominant parents, so I'm going to have a big T right here, little t right here, big T here, little t here. So let's go ahead and do our cross. So we have a homozygous dominant, heterozygous dominant right here, and then a homozygous recessive. So the homozygous dominant, so that means we're going to have 1 of those. So that's going to be equal, that's going to be 25%. And then our heterozygous dominant, we're going to actually have 2 of those. So that's going to be 50%. And then our homozygous recessive, we only have 1 of those, and that's going to be another 25%. Notice that it equals up to 100%. So if we look at our genotypic ratio, that's going to be 1 to 1. 1 homozygous dominant, 2 heterozygous dominant, then 1 homozygous recessive. So now let's look at our phenotypic ratio, and this is going to be our physical appearance. So homozygous dominant, we have 1, and that's going to be, they're going to be tall. Heterozygous dominant, that means we have 2, and so we're going to have 2 of them, they're going to be tall. Remember, the dominant trait masks that recessive trait. Then we have 1 that's going to be homozygous recessive, so that means they're going to be short. So if you look at the phenotypic ratio, 3 of them are going to be tall, 1 is going to be short. So 3 tall, 1 short. So now let's take a look at our first practice problem. So brown eyes, uppercase B, are dominant over blue eyes, lowercase b, and we're going to cross a heterozygous dominant with homozygous recessive. Remember, heterozygous stands for different, homozygous or homo stands for the same. Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and take about a minute or so and make sure that you also do your genotypes and your phenotypes as well. So take that minute and you can go ahead and pause the video now. Alright, I know everyone was successful on their first practice problem, so here's your second practice problem. You're going to be looking at curly hair is dominant over straight hair. So you're going to cross a homozygous dominant with a heterozygous recessive. And remember, also do your genotypes and your phenotypes as well. And you go ahead and take 1 minute to do so, so you can go ahead and pause the video now. So now it's time for your check for understanding. And so purple flowers are dominant over white flowers. So you're going to cross a homozygous dominant flower with a homozygous recessive flower in this first Punnett square up top. And then you're also going to do the genotypes and the phenotypes for it, and then the genotypic ratio and phenotypic ratio. And then you're going to recross the resulting offspring from this first Punnett square in this Punnett square right here. And so once you cross that resulting offspring right here, you're also going to do the genotypes and phenotypes, and then the genotypic ratio and the phenotypic ratio for this offspring or this generation right here. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this video tutorial over inheritance and Punnett squares was helpful. And once again, I'm Coach Spivey, sign off my son Jordan Spivey. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also check us out at our website at www.fathersoninnovations.com. And like I always say, make sure you have a wonderful, awesome, positive day. Peace.